mate. I'm glad you didn't take that. I'm glad you didn't take that trip to Dubai.
I know, but I've just realised that I've just gone to live now. I'm very, very sorry.
Oh, have we missed out on the Carlton theme song and everything?
We did. If you want me, I could show it now, but I'm very sorry.
Yeah, come on, let's play it again.
Let's go.
We are the Navy Blues. We are the old dark Navy Blues. We're the team that never lets you down. We're the only team old Carlton knows. With all the champions they like to send up, we'll keep our end up, and they will know that they've been playing against the famous old dark blues.
I'm sure our viewers will have enjoyed that because they would have been looking forward to it, Rash, and probably been a bit disappointed if we hadn't have played it for them. Yes, welcome everyone to Blue Sunday. I think we'll try and do this take two. Vince Lochisano with you, together with our usual guest speaker, Mr. Peter Brown, former 1979 premiership player for Carlton, and, of course, Richard Rash Hussain in the control room, who's already shown that he's out of control and already affected by the usual gremlins that Joe, our usual host, experiences on a week-to-week basis, because there's always at least one or two blues that he makes. So there you go, Rash. You've already made one. And we haven't even started yet.
Good evening, Vince. Good evening.
Good evening, Brownie. How are you, mate?
I'm good. What about yourself?
Terrific. How good is it to be a Carlton supporter?
Oh, it's certainly different to what it was prior to the run home that we had. That's for sure. Indeed.
Now, what we should also mention, of course, to all of our viewers is the reason why we have Rash back with us again this week, who has very kindly given us his time to be able to direct the show. We've got some very sad news of our own here at Blue Sunday with Joe's partner, Om, his partner of some years over there in Bangkok in Thailand. Very, very suddenly, there she is. There's a photo of her. She's a beautiful lady. And she tragically passed away a couple of days ago. Very, very sudden. Literally about a month ago, she was, at home doing the usual things and living happily with Joe. And all of a sudden, she fell ill, and things rapidly escalated. And initially, it was pneumonia, and then they discovered cancer going through her body, and unfortunately, without going into a lot of detail, she lost her very brief battle on Friday. So we certainly extend our deepest condolences to Joe and all of the family and friends that were close to Om. So we are doing this show tonight with heavy hearts in that respect. And Joe, if you're out there watching, even if you're watching not right now but later on, we do extend our deepest and heartfelt condolences. I'm sure all of us here would echo those thoughts.
Absolutely.
Very sad.
Absolutely.
I got to meet her earlier in the year, Vince, for the first time. I was in Thailand on the way coming back from Dubai. And
oh, really?
Very sad.
Yeah, I know that Rocco, who everyone knows from the Jumper Punch show, travelled to Thailand around about November, December last year, and for the first time met Joe and Om in person, and they looked after Rocco and his partner Tan like they were family. And they're very, very heartbroken and sad about the news of her passing as well. So there's been lots of messages on our Facebook page and YouTube channel and all that sort of thing. So we'll certainly pass all of those on to Joe, and with any luck, if it's not next week, if it's not the grand final week, even if it doesn't happen again for the rest of this season, we will certainly welcome him back when he's ready, when he feels ready to come back on. So, Joe, our hearts go out to you, mate.
Absolutely.
Must be heartbreaking to lose your partner like that.
It's very
Yeah, definitely. And, it's like having one of our family go, isn't it, really, when you think about it?
It is.
We've been very, very close. Not that I knew Om, but I heard quite a bit about her, and it's really sad that particularly so young and
only mid-40s,
hideous disease. Hideous.
Yeah. So apart from that, we also have been given the very sad news yesterday of the passing of an absolute legend, probably the biggest legend in VFL, AFL football, the great Ronald Dale Barassi. Finally ended his life yesterday. Well, he didn't end it, but it came to an end. Apparently due to complications from a fall. And, what a great life it was. He was 87 years of age and achieved so much in football and in life in general. But, of course, he'll be remembered in football circles as the player who played in no less than 6 premierships with the Melbourne Football Club, and then went on to coach 4 premierships, 2 with Carlton in an incredible move, probably the biggest news ever to hit football in the history of the game when Ron Barassi finally left Melbourne. No one ever expected it, and came to Carlton, and within 3 or 4 years, he got Carlton into the grand final in 1968 and ended a 21-year drought, winning the 1968 premiership as a coach. He also played 50 games for the club, and then went on to coach a very famous premiership as well in 1970 when we were 44 points behind Collingwood at half-time. And he managed to motivate his players to make one of the biggest comebacks of all time in grand final history. And Carlton went on to beat Collingwood by 10 points. And he will always be a legend at the Carlton Football Club, even though he's had probably greater involvement at Melbourne and also went on to coach North Melbourne to 2 flags in the mid-70s as well, 1975 and 1977. So he also had involvement with the Sydney Swans. He went to coach there as well. He went back to Melbourne at one stage to coach them for 5 years, but he will always be adored as one of the greats of our game. And I don't know if I can say any more. I'm probably saying too much without saying anything, but I think his name alone just stands alone as a legend. And may he rest in peace. Brownie, what were your impressions of the great man?
I think he was a sensational motivator. I felt that even though I didn't play under him, I played against sides that he coached, and I had the pleasure of meeting him on several occasions after the game, and this was when everyone could congregate after the game and socialise, even the umpires. Although sometimes that was a fair bit of banter. But I always found Ron Barassi the type of guy that it didn't matter whether you were one of the stars of the side or whether you were just a up-and-coming kid or anything like that. He always liked to engage in conversation with you, and I found that he was I'd call him a philosopher of the game, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't say he was a brilliant statistician, but I'd say that he was more a motivator more than anything else as a coach. I think coaches after him, guys like, Walls and Parkin and these types of guys, they were more of a statistician type role, whereas Ron had an aura about him that he was a motivator. And he in fact, outside of football, I think he conducted many seminars and addressed many businesses and stuff like that in a mentoring role more than anything else. So Ronald Dale, one of the good ones.
Rash, did you ever have any involvement or any interactions with Ron Barassi at all at any stage?
No, I just remember growing up as a kid, and he was like, him and Whitten were like, Mr. Football. So I mean, they were so prominent with the Sunday footy shows and stuff like that. So
iconic
Well,
of the game.
I was fortunate enough when I was president of the Carltonians to have him as a guest of ours on more than one occasion. And I remember on one particular occasion, I had the privilege of driving the great man home after the game, and we had a lovely chat in the car. And he's just a true gentleman and very hospitable, and invited me into his place there in St Kilda. In fact, I visited there a few times over the years when I was involved at the Carltonians, and always welcoming, always had a big smile on his face, that bristly moustache. I'll never forget when Ron used to smile, it would light up the room. And he was an absolute gentleman to know and to talk to, and I'm sure many others have had far more interactions than I have, but I always found him to be the true gentleman. So we certainly do send our condolences to his family as well, and I would expect probably a state funeral, Brownie, in the not too distant future. And obviously the AFL would be busily preparing right now to honour him in some way on Grand Final Day, surely, and maybe in some other ways during the week of the Grand Final, and maybe even on Brownlow Medal Night.
I think there's a push within circles of the AFL, or in fact without or outside of the AFL, to actually have the Premiership Cup named after Ronald Dale. So
yes,
that'll be interesting.
Do you agree with that? Would you vote to have that happen if it was a vote? Or do you think the Premiership Cup should be kept sacrosanct of any individual? Because, of course, not that I'm saying Ron's got any skeletons in the closet, but the danger with something like that is if you do that and then you find out something about the person in years later, then that might tarnish the whole thing. Is that the fear?
I think, and I call it the Holy Grail. I think that's realistically got to be kept separate. That is the ultimate prize at the end of the year. And I think the AFL will probably find some other way of being able to honour his name with something. But I would keep the cup separate. Right.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. Well, who knows? They might name a stand after him at the MCG. He's already got a statue of himself out the front of the MCG, so that's already been done. But who knows? I don't know. There's all sorts of ideas. Some of them are good. Some of them maybe not so good. But put it this way, he deserves more recognition and more status than any other individual that I can think of, and has done more for the game and the growth of the game nationally, because, of course, he was one of the pioneers that really pushed for the national competition. And, from that point of view, he had a lot of foresight and a lot of vision for the game. So I can't think of anyone else who's done more for Australian rules football in general than Ron Barassi.
Don't forget, he was also the pioneer in the Irish experiment too.
Yes, indeed.
He was involved with that. They'd be probably better off to name something like an academy of young players after him, or something, of that stature. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, how far do you go? You've got Michael Tuck, who's the game's record holder. Then you've got someone like Plugger Lockett, who's and no one will surpass.
Who's kicked more goals than anybody else in the game,
and will be so for a long, long time. The way that the game is played, you won't have that particular sort of thing happening again. Even Buddy Franklin, I mean, the amount of goals that he'd scored, you could go on and on and on. I mean, games record holders, looks like Pendlebury will probably get 400 games the way he's going. I mean, And the other thing is too, don't forget, there would be a lot of young people out there, whilst they would have heard of Ron Barassi, they probably wouldn't have understood the full legacy of the man's achievements in the game. So I think keeping the cup separate is probably the ideal thing. The ultimate prize is the Premiership Cup, and keep on calling it the Premiership Cup. So
yes. Yeah. Now I also just saw a message that Rash just put up on screen. And by the way, everyone, as you're watching the show, we encourage your involvement. If you can send us through your comments, your opinions, your questions. If you have a question for us that you'd like us to discuss or debate, please do so on our Facebook page, which is called Blue Sunday. Or otherwise, you could go onto our YouTube channel, which is the Jumper Punch, and go onto our live shows, and you'll see there Blue Sunday, and you can put up a comment as we are broadcasting live and premiering live right now on a Sunday night. So we had a message here from DC saying sad news about Kevin Cowboy Neal, the St Kilda great, passing as well. So I didn't know about that, to be honest.
No, it only happened today, I think.
It only happened today as well. So, these things tend to happen in threes. I hope we don't get any more. God bless all that have passed on. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he was a great of St Kilda. I mean, he was one of the best players and best St Kilda people, I think you'd just say. You went to St Kilda, Brownie, after you finished at Carlton, and it was a very different club to what Carlton was. But what are your memories of Kevin Cowboy Neal? Did you have any interactions with him?
Only against him.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but he was at the end of his career, don't forget.
Right.
And some of these guys that I had the fortunate privilege of playing against, some of them were at the end of their careers, some of them were starting off in their careers, some of them went on and played a lot more games than I did, and rightly so. And they and look, he was a character of the game, Cowboy Neal. He was. And it was when the game had individuals in it, and had characters. I mean, you can go out through history now. Sadly, the game of today is probably a lot more clinical than what it was back in the yesteryear, if you want to call it. And guys like Cowboy Neal, and you could name a whole heap of them, a whole raft of them. But they're no longer in the game. But it is sad news that but we're all getting older, aren't we? So
I guess so. Again, I had involvement with Cowboy Neal when I was at the Carltonians. So I had what we used to do is have conversations and arrangements with opposition coteries. So if it was a Carlton home game, we'd invite the St Kilda coterie if we're playing St Kilda, which were called the Halos, by the way. And Kevin Cowboy Neal had a great involvement with them in up on the microphone and interviewing, and used to get involved in helping them to raise money, whether it be auctions or whether it be raffles and all that sort of thing. So he really did continue his involvement with that club for quite a number of years, and was a real stalwart at St Kilda. So my interactions with him were always pleasant. He was a lovely chap, a real character, and I'm sad to hear of his passing this afternoon. All right, now we'll move on.
For Brownie, if we may.
Yep,
it's a really good question. I'd like to know that answer too. And before we get into the games, because everyone's waiting for that, so Brownie, could you possibly enlighten us with that question?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't have a definitive answer on that one, so I'm sorry if I sound a little bit vague on this.
And the question, by the way, was, Rash, you want to leave that up? From Jimmy Raptus, I think it is. Question for Brownie: why did so many ex-Carlton players end up at the Saints back in the day? Now that happened even when Jesselenko and yourself back in the early 80s went to St Kilda, but it also happened in the mid 80s as well, didn't it?
Yes, it did. There was a number of players of which I had the pleasure of playing with at Carlton, and some of them were in the 79 final side, actually, that ended up at St Kilda, and there was a raft of players that went there. Jezza was probably the pioneer, and he was the guy that kicked it off. I then went, and then I was only there for a couple of years, and then, of course, I exited, and then there was a number of players that ended up going there later on. So
Peter McConville, Kenny Sheldon, Alex Marcoux, Warren Jones,
Corkamillis,
Spiro Corkamillis, Ian Muller.
There was a number of
Ricky Nixon.
There was a number of them that went
in fact, as a matter of fact, Brownie, we actually did get a couple back the other way. If you remember back in, I think it was 1980, we got Val Perovic across from St Kilda to come to Carlton,
right.
and he ended up playing in a couple of premierships for Carlton at centre half back. He's a fantastic player. In fact, he sat next to my daughter. He sat next to my daughter on Friday night, basically giving her instruction right the way through the game. Terrific to see.
Sounds like Pera.
Yeah, but Pera was fantastic.
Dean Rice and Blake Acres. There you go. But guys,
there you go. Dean Rice, of course, was another one. But there's lots of examples.
I'm sorry, I can't give you any insight into exactly why there was an exodus to there. But the experiment did work to a certain point. It didn't really get them across the line, not like it was. I mean, the club was run differently compared to Carlton. So,
now, by the way, I mentioned that Val Perovic was sitting next to my daughter on Friday night. That was my daughter's very first experience at a Carlton final, and she only had that experience thanks to a fantastic premiership player for Carlton who very kindly gave us the opportunity to have those tickets, and that's Mr. Peter Brown. Wow. So, Brownie, thanks very much, mate. I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank you publicly for that, and I'm sure my daughter Sienna would also like to extend that. In fact, she has already told me to thank you. And I also met this lovely chap called Ralph De Quattro. There he is. He's actually just sent a message through. Hi, Vince. It was a real pleasure to meet you and your partner just before the game Friday night. Yes, we were walking to the ground and he said, I know you. You're on Blue Sunday. And I said, he said, I watch your show every Sunday night. And I said, oh, you're the one. So, no, that's very nice of him to come up and say hello. And, yes, we had a little photo. So it was terrific to meet one of our viewers. And also, after the game, Rash, I think you got a photo of who we met in Lygon Street, Carlton, straight after it.
Well, I'm going to put that up when we talk about the Carlton game. Let's talk about.
I thought you were going to put it up now. If you've got it now, you might as well put it up now. We're talking about who we met.
Well,
Brownie, guess who we met? Guess who we met at a pizza restaurant?
I was at Lygon Street too, by the way.
Wouldn't be in Lygon Street, would it?
Yeah, Cafe Cavallino. There it is. Young Jesse Motlop himself.
Oh dear.
We were having pizza and all that straight after the game. There was hundreds, thousands, in fact, of cars driving past, honking their horns and playing the Carlton theme song full blast and waving their scarves and high-fiving us as they were driving past. And that photo there on the left is my daughter Sienna with Jesse. In fact, they both wear number 3 on their Guernseys. My daughter plays football as well, so it was good to have a photo with the 2 number 3s. Then you've got my partner, Tanya, I think, in the middle. No, she's on the right. I'm the one in the middle. Okay, there you go. So there's me and Jesse in the middle. So it was a great surprise. He just sat down next to us with his dad, who, by the way, used to play footy for North Melbourne, Daniel Motlop. And his father's partner as well. And, we had a lovely chat and a couple of photos. And it was great fun. What a night it was. Unbelievable celebrations after the game. You would have actually sworn black and blue. We've just won the flag.
Yeah.
I think one of the main reasons for that is I think there's a young generation there of supporters who have never, ever experienced what it feels like to win a final. And last week they were already in raptures. Now to win that game again in such circumstances, I think everyone went into fully blown, euphoria, ecstasy. It was unbelievable, the level of celebration after the game.
I was there too, Vince.
Oh, and Johnny Redmond, yes, I took Johnny into the MCG too. He got a lift for the second week in a row. G'day, Johnny. Nice to see you. So anyway, it was a big game and fantastic celebrations afterwards.
Yeah.
In fact, Rash, you know what Rash told me today when we were having a chat, Brownie?
What's
Apparently, he was at the same restaurant and we never saw each other.
Oh, really?
I
Wow.
can't believe it. I can't believe we missed each other.
We missed each other. It's unbelievable. And I was there. I reckon there was about 25 cop cars. The streets were closed. There was thousands. There was the Lebanese guys with their drums, Italians. It was festive. It was fantastic.
It was almost like the Euro when Italy won the Euro 2020 competition a couple of years ago. Similar sort of feel about it. You know, the drums were banging. The noise was, could be heard for suburbs away.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable atmosphere.
Boys,
but anyway.
I've got a really good comment here. If I can just share it. It just keeps on going because we're getting lots of comments, and this is the comment everyone wants to talk about. Let's talk about the game.
Yes. And by the way, Tony Amadeo there, I think he made a comment just before that I wanted to also highlight. He said something before that one. I noticed, Rash.
Yeah, I'll check.
Tony Amadeo said something.
There's a lot of comments coming through.
Yeah. I was going to refer to his comment. It went up and then went down pretty quickly, but there's
a lot.
Can you find it? It came through a couple of minutes ago. But anyway, until we do that,
let's move
on.
I'll try and find it. Let's go to the first game, and let's talk about it quickly because we don't really care. So we get into Carlton. Let's just put the scores.
What do you mean we don't really care? We can potentially coming up against these guys in the grand final. Anyway, yes, the other game that was that took place on the weekend was last night. A huge game at the Adelaide Oval. Of course, Port Adelaide getting the home game, finishing third on the ladder. They lost their first final, but they get the double chance. So they had the home final against the all-conquering GWS Giants, and the Giants did a number on them again, reversing what was a loss of over 50 points only a few weeks ago to really comprehensively win this game. I don't think they ever looked under threat of losing that. In the end, it was 13-15, 93 to Port Adelaide 9, 16, 70. Just quickly, I'll go through the quarter-by-quarter scores. You won't believe the last one when I go through it, Brownie. In the first quarter, it was 4-4 to 4-1 in the Giants' favour. So a 3-point lead. Pretty good first quarter all round by both clubs. Then that second quarter, they took charge, GWS. They kicked 5-7. They could have even kicked a lot more goals than 5, in my opinion. They missed a few easy ones. Port Adelaide kicked only 1-5 for the quarter. So it was 9-11-65 to 5-6-36 at halftime, a 29-point lead after leading by only 3 points at quarter time. So that was a very significant quarter for the GWS Giants. Port Adelaide made a little bit of a go at them in the third quarter, kicking 3-1 to the Giants, 2-4. But really, it was only a 3-point advantage for the quarter. So 11-15 is 81 to 8-7-55. So the margin went from 29 back to 26. And then in the last quarter, GWS just kicked the 2 goals straight. And get a load of this, Brownie. Port Adelaide, 1-9.
Yeah.
They were spraying them left, right, and centre in that last quarter. Obviously, the pressure was on, and it just got to the players, and they were just spraying them all over the place. So, in the end, they ended up kicking more behinds than GWS, even though they had 8 less behinds at three-quarter time. But anyway, it just goes to show you bad kicking is bad football, and it will cost you games and cost you finals. Even Melbourne know that. So that was an interesting game. In terms of goal kickers, we had Jesse Hogan with 4 goals, 4 for GWS, a little bit inaccurate. Toby Green, how good was he? 3 goals, 2. Canelio, 2 goals. Daniels, Riccardi, Cumming, and Kelly, all kicking 1 goal each for GWS. For Port Adelaide, it was Rioli with 3. Marshall with 2, and then singles to Horne-Francis, Lord, Dixon, and Drew. So that was it. And Port Adelaide, similar to Melbourne, out in straight sets. Who would have thought that both teams finishing 3rd and 4th on the ladder would have been out in straight sets?
It's interesting.
Everything's possible.
It's interesting, isn't it? If you have a look at it and analyse the the sides that ended up in the 8, and particularly more so, not so much with GWS and us, but the other sides were very, very inaccurate in front of goal. You've got Melbourne that's inaccurate in front of goal. You've got now Port Adelaide. Both of them are gone. The other one that's really inaccurate in front of goal is Brisbane. They're spraying them all over the place as well. And the point that you made before, bad kicking is bad football, particularly more so in a final, because the games are so tight. You want to take advantage of actually the opportunities that are presented to you, and you need to make them count. And some of them, okay, you could argue that some of them were under pressure and they were touched over the line and things like that. But some of the ones that they missed, in pretty, I call it easy circumstances. For example, there was, I think it was Pel Pepper, I think at one stage that sprayed it, and he's normally fairly accurate in front of goal. Port Adelaide players were certainly not on their game. And
some of them went in with injury concerns too, Brownie. I heard Ken Hinkley say after the game that, look, they did go in with some players that were not 100%, but they made the decision that even though they were going in at 80 or 85% fit, that was better than bringing in totally inexperienced young players who wouldn't have been up to the task. So, but nevertheless, it's just proven yet again that you can't afford to go into finals with injured players.
No, you can't. No,
and I don't think Charlie Dixon looked right either. Just quietly.
No, he was.
He tried, but he was certainly underdone.
Yeah, and Lysette, they lost him through an ankle injury, and then even Briggs, he actually hurt himself too. The ruckman for GWS, so he spent some time off the ground. He did a shoulder. But interestingly enough, one of the things that I picked up early in that game was the fact that Butters and Rosie didn't have the influence on the game that they've been having all year. They were sort of pretty quiet and inconspicuous with their presence. Not that GWS allowed them to do very much. And Tom Green could be an interesting one. He's really important to that side, and he could actually get a week for what he did. It was highlighted in the broadcast that he'd given Rosie an elbow to the guts, and he went down. And I don't think he got reported for it, but I think that it'll be interesting. The match review will have a pretty close look at that.
They always try and get those downgraded to a fine, don't they? When they give them a bit of a gut punch. But look, I think the reason that this analysis is relevant for our viewers, by the way, is because you might think that it's just a lay down misère for Collingwood. I don't think so. I think this side GWS has, if you look at their form since about the middle of the year. In fact, I noticed a Facebook post today, which reminded all of us that after round 15, Carlton were 15th on the ladder and GWS 14th. And guess what? Even Sydney Swans were 13th. And all three of those teams ended up making the 8. Now, if you were ever to look at two sides who are really in form with close to a fully fit list, it's these two teams. And I think that they are a big chance to knock off Collingwood next Friday night. I really do. I think that they cannot be underestimated. I know it'll be a hostile crowd, and I know it's the MCG, but I heard Toby Green even say that they're looking at the MCG like it's a home ground because they're playing there very often in recent weeks, and they want it to be like a second home ground for them so that they can feel comfortable come grand final day.
It's interesting.
They're clearly planning to make the big dance.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, GWS look like they're going in as favourites for this game. Collingwood looks like, even though they had all the form going through the year and won the mini premiership and everything like that, Collingwood is going into this game under pressure.
I think what's been really unique about this year's finals and the teams that make up the finals is that even though if you have a look at it after the final home and away round, the top 4 teams are clearly finished, 10 points. I think Melbourne finished 10 points, 10 premiership points ahead of us in 5th. But the 3 of the 4 teams that finished between 5th and 8th were the form teams, and I mentioned them before: Sydney, Carlton, and GWS.
Yeah.
St Kilda's the other one, and I think they sort of lost their form a little bit. They probably did well enough to make the finals, but were always going to struggle. So the top 4 teams, they were clearly above when it came to premiership points because of all the wins that they banked earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But they weren't the 4 form teams going into the finals. And I think what we've seen already is that both Port Adelaide and Melbourne have their deficiencies, and you do get found out in finals when it comes to the opposition exposing your weaknesses.
I think the important thing to consider here is that, and I mentioned it last week, that when you go into a finals campaign, particularly more so 2 or 3 weeks out from a finals campaign, you need a fit and healthy list. That's the first thing. And secondly, you need players that are in form. And, particularly more so with Melbourne and Port Adelaide, they sort of linked into the finals campaign and the final series for them. They were trying to shuffle players around. Like there were certain parts of the sides that were settled. For example, Melbourne's back line was settled, right? Because of
it was their forward line. They kept losing soldiers in the forward line, didn't they?
Correct. And then they were trying to adjust their midfield to be able to compensate for that. And then, of course, naturally, that caused a problem. Obviously, with the injuries that Port Adelaide had going in as well, that unsettled them. And even Hinkley, with the comments that he made in terms of going into the final, he's prepared to take people in that are 80% fit rather than have people that are 100% fit and ready to go. So he didn't have enough confidence, obviously, in his younger brigade, and obviously they hadn't played enough football during the year to warrant having selection in those games. But anyway, the thing is that GWS have come home with a wet sail, and as a result of that, they've come in with form and a game plan that really looks like it's exciting the competition. Someone enlightened them to, Richmond back in, it might have been 2017 or 19.
Yeah, 2017 when they came off a bad year in 2016 and all of a sudden won the premiership out of nowhere, yeah.
Correct.
Well, that's true. That is true. I just think that they play a very similar brand of football to ourselves, but they are really showing a lot of confidence in each other, a lot of belief in their game plan and what their coach wants them to do. And it's very hard to fault the way they go about winning their games. It's very methodical, and they just I'm impressed with them. I've got to say, I'm really impressed with GWS. I think they have the potential to go all the way to the grand final and potentially even win it.
Well, I think they're in a situation where they've got a captain that's in good form. They've got a captain that's showing discipline.
He's brilliant, isn't he, Toby Green?
Leading from the front. Someone also made mention in the broadcast about the fact that GWS match up really well against Collingwood. So that could be a telling factor in the game itself. So,
Collingwood also learnt that Taylor Adams has strained his hamstring and will more than likely not play in the prelim final. So that's another important soldier out of the side for them. Although it looks like Nick Dacos will be fit to play. So they lose one, but they bring another very good one in.
Yeah, but don't forget, you've got two different players. Nick Dacos is not an in and under player, whereas Adams is. He's an in and under player. So for like, I think Collingwood's going to struggle to cover that. Particularly going into their game.
Well, they'll be well rested after having the week's rest. That's the advantage of winning your qualifying final. But look, I just think that there's a lot of momentum with both GWS and Carlton, and both teams can certainly go into their prelims chock full of confidence in the way they're playing. It's all a matter of now whether they can butter up, get over the niggles, get over the injuries, and go front up again in the same manner and play with that same brutal intensity that that both teams have played with in the first 2 weeks. Anyway, I'll also mention, of course, that Ken Hinkley, of course, was signed up for a couple of years extension. Do you think they were a bit? I think I saw a comment before that one of our viewers thinks he might have been signed up a bit too early. They might have jumped a bit there, but I think he deserved to get extended after getting them into the top 4. But as it stands, they've slipped out of the top 4, both Port and Melbourne. The official positions now at the end of the year will be 5th and 6th, in fact, because GWS and Carlton have now gone from 5th and 7th into the top 4.
Yep.
So, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think they did the right thing in re-signing Ken Hinkley, or would you have made a change?
No, I don't think I would have made a change. I think Ken Hinkley's already proven that he can get players up, and they'll come back. They'll bounce back. They'll have a decent preseason, and no doubt.
What do you think their biggest weakness is? What do they have to focus on and concentrate on, and potentially recruit and trade even in order to achieve in terms of their playing list?
Oh, I think one of their nemesis, if you want to, has been their backline this year. I think that's been under pressure all year. And Tom
Jonas has just retired too, by the way, their captain.
Correct.
And he hardly played this year. He was left out of the team for the majority of the year, and he was the captain. That surely is an awkward situation, isn't it?
Oh, look, I think if it's. I mean, whilst you like to have your captain on the ground, as you know, I was very critical of bloody Cripps earlier in the year because he wasn't playing well and stuff like that. I would have rested him some time ago to get himself right for a finals campaign. But in the case of Jonas, I don't think he was good enough. He was obviously not in their best 25, or else he'd be out there leading the side.
But yet again, we saw the opposition kick nearly 100 points there on Saturday night. So I think their general defence needs a lot of work. I think they're pretty good in the midfield and up forward. Although I also think if Charlie Dixon can't get himself fit for at least 3/4 of a season, I don't see that there's much point in having him in the side if he can only play 10 or 12 games a year.
Well, they rely quite heavily on Marshall and Pel Pepper to actually score their goals for them. And Marshall tends to be a little bit lost without Charlie there. I think because all of the backline focus is on Marshall then rather than Charlie. So I think that they'll recruit over the summer period, and I think that they've unleashed that kid that's only had a couple of 3 games, the young bloke. I can't think of his name, but he looks like that he could.
Ollie Lord.
That's it. He could potentially be a reasonable forward for them.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We've probably concentrated enough on those games. I think we're getting a few viewers saying that they want to discuss Carlton. So let's get into that. The Melbourne versus Carlton game. What a result. What a fantastic game of football. This will be one for the ages. This won't I don't think this will ever age, if you like. I think it'll be one of these games that'll be replayed for the next 25 years at least. A bit like the 1999 preliminary final. We're still watching it now, 24 years on. In fact, I've got to say this game comes within an absolute whisker of being on the same level as that game. I think the only reason I would rank the 99 prelim ahead of it is because when we won that, it was by a point over a traditional rival in Essendon, and it actually got us into a grand final. This one, a 2-point result over a team that you could sort of say over the years has been a sort of a rival, but certainly nowhere near as bitter rival as Collingwood or Essendon or Richmond. And it gets us into a prelim. It doesn't get us into a grand final. So I'd say it from that point of view, it's just slightly behind the 99 prelim. But as a game and as a spectacle, it was every bit as exciting, every bit as, heart-stopping. And what a game. What a fantastic result for Carlton supporters to rejoice afterwards. Of course, we kicked very straight, 11 goals, 7, 73. That's only 18 scoring shots. To Melbourne, 9 goals, 17, 71. 26 scoring shots. So just quickly, the quarter-by-quarter scores. Melbourne were in the lead at quarter time, 3-3-21 to 2-2-14. Then Carlton kicked 3 goals, 1 to only 1 goal, 4 in the second quarter to hold a 2-point lead, 5-3-33 to 4-7-31. So the halftime lead ended up being the same margin at the end. Melbourne then had a very good third quarter, kicking 3 goals, 4. Probably should have been even better than it was, to Carlton's 2 goals, 2. They held the lead by a goal at three-quarter time. But, gee, I'll tell you what, within 3 minutes of the last quarter starting, it was us that had a 1-goal lead. We kicked 2 very quick ones. In fact, we kicked 4 goals for the last quarter. That was more than any team throughout the whole game. We kicked 4 goals, 2, and Melbourne kicked 2 goals, 6. So we ended up finishing on 11-7-73 to 9-17-71. In terms of goal kickers for Carlton, no one kicked the big bag. We had 4 players on 2 goals. That was Akers, and weren't they important goals? De Conning in the first quarter kicked our first 2. Motlop kicked 2, both at the punt road end, both very important goals. And Walsh kicked a couple at very important times as well. Then singles to Curnow, Kennedy, Owies, and that's it. So Curnow, Kennedy, and Owies kicked 1. For Melbourne, the goal kickers were Joel Smith, who I thought was excellent up forward, kicking very straight as well, 3 goals straight. Fritsch kicked 2 goals, 3. Keziah Pickett kicked 2 goals, 3. And then singles to Langdon and Petrarca. And that's it. So they're the goal kickers, and I guess we can put up some stats quickly just to see where possibly there was some differences that really mattered for the game. Now, I'm not sure if everyone can see that, but Rash tells me for some reason we've got all 4 pages on one hit. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, but yes.
But what I will do is I'll go through some of the stats myself here. You'll find that the disposals were very, very similar. It was 368 to Melbourne, 361 to Carlton. So basically the same. Disposal efficiency, ours was a little better, 71% to 66. Kicks and handballs were all very, very similar. Free kicks, we had 26 free kicks to Melbourne's 19. And I think you'll find that we got the last 7 of the game. I could be wrong. I stand corrected, but I remember looking at the free kick stats at one stage, and it was showing 19 each. Contested possessions, Melbourne had more contested possessions, which is interesting. We had slightly more uncontested. They outmarked us 97 to 88. Contested marks, they outmarked us 15 to 12. Uncontested marks, 82 to 76. Marks inside 50, they won 10 to 9. They even won the hitouts 38 to 29. They won the clearances 36 to 33. And tackles, that's one of the areas that we won significantly, 64 to 49. Even though they won the tackles inside 50, 10 to 8. And in terms of shots for goal, they had 26 to our 18. They had 26 shots from 53 entries. That's 49%. We had only 18 shots from 52 entries. So we were down to 35% there. But the area that they let themselves down and probably cost them the game is shooting accuracy. Ours was 61%, kicking 11 goals, 7 from 18 shots. And they only had a 35% shooting accuracy, kicking 9 goals and 17 behinds from 26 shots. So you could probably point straight to that and say that's where they lost it. But,
No.
I mean, look, you could point to a lot of different things that happened during the game. And some of them were just, inches in it. Like Max Gawn even touching that ball over the line. If he had have let it go through, it would have been a goal.
Yeah.
He ends up palming it back and it hits the post. Now,
yes.
It's just one of those, brain fades that you think to yourself, why did he do that? But obviously that's pressure, and that's finals football.
Absolutely. And it was an interesting game. There was patches of the game that you just sort of sat there and shook your head and thought, well, hang on, these are professional footballers and they get paid really well, but some of the mistakes they were making, for example, not being able to hit targets, spraying handballs, not being able to take advantage of certain situations. And there was a number of times that Melbourne went inside 50 but picked out a Carlton player. And there were times that Carlton went inside 50 and picked out a Melbourne player. So it was one of those things where I think, for mine, I think the people that make the least mistakes probably can take advantage of the win rather than you would. The pressure of the game, whilst it was played at a fairly fast pace, I thought that there were some of the, particularly foot skills and stuff like that, they were sort of lacking a little bit. And interestingly enough, one of the things that I found, I don't know whether you've noticed or not, but Oliver for Melbourne, whilst he gets a lot of the ball, have you noticed that Oliver very rarely lowers his eyes? He tends to kick long into the forward line rather than actually look for a target within that.
They did a lot of bombing it into the forward line, I felt.
Yeah. And I would have thought that would have been against, team orders, I would imagine, because they weren't all that tall. They had McDonald down there that didn't feature in the game, and they were relying upon the guys, the smaller forwards, to kick the goals. Cosy Pickett, Fritz, and these guys that were their avenue to goal. And whilst they were trying to look for a contest, I thought that played into the hands of Wiedering and Kemp.
The only thing I could say in response to that, Brownie, was that what did work a couple of times, and maybe this was in their thinking, was that Joel Smith is a real jack in the box. He can jump high, a bit like his dad. He took the mark of the year in 1995, if you remember, against Brisbane at the Gabba. And his son's very similar in his build and how he jumps high. And maybe they were planning on having Joel Smith fly for everything and take marks and kick goals, because he was essentially given that task of replacing, Melksham and Petty and players like that have had to be taken out through injury. So I think that's what they decided before the game, because Joel Smith basically started forward, and that's where he remained for the majority of the game.
I think what happened also is that whilst Joel Smith was dangerous up front because he kicked three straight, towards the end of the game, I think you'll find that he was closely tagged. He wasn't allowed to have that run and jump at the ball that he was afforded earlier in the game. So I think and
they did. They swapped. I think at one stage they even gave him the biggest compliment by putting Wiedering onto him, I noticed, in the last quarter.
Absolutely. And the other thing that was interesting too is that every time that Gawn went forward, Pitnet was given the job of running with him. I sort of got the impression that Gawn wasn't right. I think that broken toe that he's got is probably hindering him a little more than what he was making out, because it just didn't look 100% to mine. And
what did you think of his decision to go for a right foot banana kick when the game was on the line? And if that kick had been a goal, you'd probably say put down your glasses, they win. Yeah. But he kicked the right-footed banana. The margin for error was just too much. I think. Sorry, what am I trying to say? Not too much. There was a very small window to get that goal based on that style of kick. Whereas if he had gone on his left foot and curled it around on his left foot like we see so many other players do on their wrong foot, it probably would have had a better chance of bending around from left to right.
I think this banana kick is just overrated, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think if you don't hit it right, the obvious results are there. You either spray it across the face or you miss the goal altogether. But I'm with you. If a player is that close to goal, then he really should go back and have a deliberate shot at goal rather than try and spray it around the corner.
By the way, just on your point on Oliver, while he did get 27 disposals, 14 kicks and 13 handballs, he only had a 62% disposal efficiency. So, only 17 of those 27 possessions were deemed effective. So it just goes to show you that sometimes, you can get a lot of the ball, but if they're not effective possessions, you're not going to be damaging the opposition.
Yeah, no,
He had seven clangers.
Yeah.
It's a fairly significant amount.
Look, I know that he can penetrate long into the forward line with his kick, but if you haven't got a forward line set up structure so that, you can take advantage of that, then obviously it's a waste of kick going into the forward line. And honestly, if you really had to sit and analyse the game, it was really a battle of the back lines, wasn't it? I mean, Melbourne's backs were well and truly on top of the Carlton forwards. I mean,
I'm trying to talk impartially here, but if anyone can't acknowledge that Stephen May was the best man on the ground, well, then you're one-eyed. He was amazing. I just thought he was unbelievable, Stephen May, especially in that last quarter.
Yeah, May and both May and Lever. And Rivers. Don't forget Rivers. I thought his game was fairly good. So, but anyway, the other bloke, Bowie, he's also a reasonable player. He takes a small forward rather than the bigger. But I thought that our entries inside 50 were sometimes suspect purely and simply because May and Lever were controlling back there. I mean, obviously Charlie was out of position a number of times, and you mentioned before that our goal kickers were Motlop, who's a small forward and taking advantage of probably crunching and things like that. But then you've got Walsh, who had an outstanding game for us. His leadership was magnificent. He hit the scoreboard. Not only were they possessions, but they were tough possessions. He was an in and under, and when things counted. DeConning, it was an interesting game from the big TDK. He gave us our first two goals of the game, and he was providing the spark when things started to look like they were going to fall off the cliff a little bit. He certainly breathed life into the Carlton supporters by getting those two goals in the second half of that first quarter. In fact, I just wanted to try and review this game a little bit quarter by quarter if we can. That first quarter, Melbourne got off to a pretty good start. They were 3-0 and we didn't get our first goal until I think the 21st minute mark of that first quarter. And up until then, I think they were showing us a clean pair of heels around the packs and around the forward line. Their forward line looked quite lively, and ours was looking a little bit out of sorts. Well, I don't think we were allowed to play. I think that, you could put it down to nerves, you could put it down to inexperience, you could put it down to a number of things, but the result is that they weren't allowed to be able to get near the ball. We were chasing it rather than creating it. So, and then the big fellow was able to kick the two, which did give them an opportunity to lift a little bit. And you could see that once the big fella kicked the two goals, it was something that started to inspire them. And his work, not only in the forward line but around the ground, was terrific. And in that first quarter, like you, I was starting to wonder where we're going to get our goals from, purely and simply because we weren't handling it when we did have the opportunity of going inside, that we really didn't pick out, targets. We didn't lower our eyes. It looked like that, we were falling back into bad habits. And we just weren't taking advantage of perhaps. And I think the other thing is too that Lever and May, they're a master at being able to control and guard space rather than, because what Lever and May do is that they'll allow Charlie to run up the ground, but they're back in that other defensive line, which is it's the kick and a half outside the danger period or the danger area. So that's why they were able to control what they were able to do in the particularly more so in that first quarter.
Tell you what, didn't the Carlton crowd come alive when TDK took his first mark? It was a bit of a mismatch with Bowie, wasn't it? And he kicked the goal. It never looked like missing. It was a beautiful shot. And then, of course, he got his second one. And the noise that the Carlton crowd was making was considerably louder than Melbourne. I mean, I've got to say, even at the start of the game, I was a bit shocked because I didn't think it was very respectful. But then again, it is a battle. The Melbourne players come onto the ground and their song starts playing and they run through the banner, and you just heard this massive amount of booing from the Carlton supporters, and mainly because I was near the Carlton cheer squad. I think it came from them. But we made a lot more noise than they did throughout the game, and I think that must have helped our boys at various stages when they really needed a lift. Even in that last quarter when I think we were 8 or 9 points down, and you could just tell that it was slipping away from us a little. The crowd really started chanting Carlton, Carlton, and you could really sense that it lifted the boys.
Well, I think
you didn't see, you weren't at the game. Did you hear that at any stage throughout the television broadcast?
Oh, definitely. I mean,
you could hear it. Yeah.
Oh, well, 96,000 people at a final is unprecedented.
But it felt like we had at least 2/3 to 1/3, maybe even more.
Yeah.
In terms of noise.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was definitely coming through. There was no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Even Rash said that most of the commentary in the SEN box was pretty one-sided from Andy Marr and his ability.
And Mark McClure, yeah. Well, it is a pretty much a Carlton commentary. It is meant to be a Carlton biased commentary. So anyway, they've done that 2 weeks in a row now and been on the right side of things. Sorry, Rash, did you want to say something?
Can I just say, because I was fortunate enough, I caught up with Lana, Lana.
Lana Owens, one of our wonderful, loyal viewers and listeners. Yep.
She's amazing. So we caught up. We went to Ange Christo's restaurant where they had parking and stuff all there.
On Thursday night, yes.
Yeah, and it was a great event. It was on the front bar.
I'm spewing I missed it, to be honest.
Well, I told you to come. But she got me a ticket, so I was fortunate to go. And I was up like level 4 right on the back. I couldn't care less. But one thing I realized was that it was so high pressure. I went to the 95 grand final. I never witnessed anything like that ever. And I'm sure the comments would be the same. I had to go outside for a vape, and I was freaking out. I was like, I can't do a grand final. If we do a grand final, I'm not going. I lost my voice. So it was crazy. We've
got a question here from Cameron.
Last quarter. Huh?
We've got a question there from Cameron who says, to Brownie, in your experience, did that affect how you played? I assume he's talking about the noise made by the supporters and the cheer squad and that sort of thing.
79 was the year that Up There Gazali was released from Mike Brady, if you recall.
Okay.
And, running out onto the ground at the start of the game, whilst it was, that much of mud and water on the ground at that stage, it was appreciated. It rained all night. But the one thing that I do remember was coming down the race and being hit by the sound of Up There Gazali with the speakers that were on top of the northern stand and southern stand, and the roar of the crowd was sensational. Now, interestingly enough, I got a kick early in the game, and usually I'm able to get a bit closer to goal at 35 metres out, and it felt like there was 100,000 people sitting on my shoulder. I couldn't get my leg out of the bloody So look, it's until it settles down and until you get that opportunity to block out the noise and then start to concentrate on what you've got to do. It is deafening, and it is it's a big responsibility for a young man to have at any given possession when you're playing in that game. So when you're there, and firstly first and foremost is that you've got to make sure you beat your opponent, but secondly is that you don't stuff it up, because that can cost you dearly in disposal. So,
you were only a 20-year-old, almost 21, but basically 20 years of age in that 1979 premiership, and we've only got one or two players who are that age in our current team. And Jesse Motlop's 19; he'll be 20 in, I think, November or December this year. So he's about the only one I can think of. And Ollie Hollands, of course, is 18 years of age as well. So these guys are the real young bucks that are in a similar position potentially to yourself.
Yeah, well, but the difference was that we had a side that was made up of experienced players, like your Southbys, your Douls, your Jezzes, your Mike Fitzpatricks, your Percy Joneses and Armstrongs, and all these guys. They had Southby. They had finals experience and
years of it. Yeah,
that was mixed in with the finals experience.
Our team doesn't have that. That's the difference, isn't it? Our team today, Motlop and Hollands, can't really go to the most senior members of our squad and really get much advice in terms of how to handle finals football.
No. Well, obviously, those senior players haven't experienced.
But they've done pretty well, haven't they? I mean, you consider Hollands' game on Friday night, and when he came on the ground as our sub, I thought he did himself proud. And Jesse Motlop kicked two absolute rippers from that pocket down at the punt road end.
Yeah, no, they were it's interesting, isn't it? You get that dynamic that happens that you said Hinckley before didn't have a lot of confidence in the fact that he wanted to bring inexperienced players in. Well, sometimes it can be either the making or breaking of a player. They can either stand up and make a name for themselves, and have a breakout game, or they can fall by the wayside. And it's an interesting dynamic.
All right. Well, let's continue on. I thought that we had a really good second half of the first quarter and first half of the second quarter. If you look at it, Melbourne kicked the first 3 goals of the game, but then we kicked the next 5, and they didn't score any goals for about a full quarter's worth of play. 15 minutes in one quarter and 15 minutes in the second one. But then, of course, they settled again, got another goal back just before half-time, and it felt like, okay, we're going to start again in the second half because there was only 2 points of difference. How did you feel at half-time after that second quarter?
I felt going in at half-time that we had a great opportunity here. It was interesting because they showed the Port Adelaide rooms, the Melbourne rooms, and there was a lot of players in the when they were in their huddles and things like that. And a lot of the Melbourne players looked like their shoulders were down, their heads were down. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I thought, now, is that because, Carlton wrestled it back off them rather than, because Melbourne are big on putting scoreboard pressure on and being in a situation where they can dominate the game. And it was never going to happen. It was always going to be an arm wrestle. And it was, I thought Voss's comments after the game were relevant. He said it was a real struggle. It was an arm wrestle out there, and I guess we just found the way to win the game, and we willed ourselves to that contest and were able to take advantage of that. So there were some nervous moments in that third quarter. And
I think there were moments. I was going to get onto the third quarter next. There were moments in that third quarter that I felt like, hang on, we're struggling here, and we just felt like it just felt to me like we stopped running a little bit, and they started to break away from packs and get some handball chains going, and started to use the corridor a lot more, and started to get some scoring opportunities going forward, and they actually hit the scoreboard a lot more than us in that third quarter. It had the potential to actually give them a decent lead, which they didn't really take. I mean, only one goal up at three-quarter time. I felt satisfied that we were obviously within striking distance, but we could have been 3 or 4 goals down.
Absolutely. And quite easily too, because the shots that they missed weren't all that hard.
No.
And they put themselves, I think if you really had to sit back and put a finger on it, I'd say that they put their own pressure on themselves by not being able to keep going.
Yeah. I think there's a lot. Look, you can look at these games in various different ways. You can give Carlton all of the credit and the players all of the kudos for putting the pressure on and causing Melbourne to make mistakes and I guess restricting them to only the 9 goals, even though they sprayed a few. And you can give Carlton all of the credit and basically say, we outplayed them. You can also take a different approach and say, well, Melbourne could easily have won, probably should have won. If you look at all the stats, you would probably suggest with that amount of scoring shots, they should have won. But in the end, a lot of those scoring shots were rushed behinds from forward entries that only sort of they were nothing kicks into. They weren't going to be long enough to get over the line, and they weren't going to be positioned at the top of the square. They were all kicked deep into the goal square where it was just easy to knock it through every time. I think that caused a lot of the Melbourne points, a lot of those rush behinds.
Well, I think whilst there was activity pressure, there wasn't scoreboard pressure because of the points that were being scored. I mean, I think like you, I think the result might have been different if there was scoreboard pressure there rather than general play pressure.
Well, they kicked 3 goals for, as I said earlier, to 2 goals 2 in that third quarter. So we lost. We I guess gave up a 2-point lead at halftime, and it ended up being a 6-point deficit. So it wasn't tragic. It was only an 8-point turnaround. And then, of course, within 3 minutes of the last quarter, again, we started off so well. And lots of those quarters, we started off very well. And we got 2 goals on the board in almost no time. And from being 1 goal down, we were 1 goal up after 3.5 minutes.
That Walsh goal was absolute class.
Yeah.
That was a good goal.
It was.
Yeah, he worked really hard for that.
I think that was our message, and Owies kicked the one straight after Walsh. So I think that was Carlton saying, hey, Melbourne, if you think you're just going to run away with this, think again. I think that was a very strong message right at the start of that last quarter.
I'm loving the new blue collar blues. Love it. Keep going.
Well, then they kicked 2. They kicked 2 after that. Cozzy Pickett kicked 1. And then Bailey Fritsch scored another. And that was their only 2 goals for the quarter. And that Bailey Fritsch goal was at the 9-minute, 46-second mark. So roughly 10-minute mark. The rest of the quarter, they didn't get a goal.
No.
I think they scored about 5 points after that in succession. Their last 5 scores were all behinds. Now, some of them were a bit controversial. The Max Gawn one, where he tapped it back onto the post. Was that the Clayton Oliver kick that he hit that into the post?
I thought it was the
that was the one that Gawn tapped out.
I know, but I'm thinking Oliver had a shot for goal too, and I think that was touched right on the line too. I think was that the Max Gawn one? I think that was the one. Because I thought the Oliver kick might have actually gone over the line, but as it turns out, it didn't. And, of course, Jack Viney got a point. We talked about Max Gawn getting a behind as well because of that banana kick. So, look, they had plenty of opportunities, didn't they? Bailey Finch got another point as well. But tell you what, that last couple of minutes when we were 9 points down, my goodness, those couple of minutes are going to be played time and time again for the next 25 years at least.
Well, I think
Sorry, go, Brownie.
I was just going to say that play that Akers actually scored the last goal to put us in front, that was one that was gutsy because
how clever was he?
We went straight through the middle of the corridor, hit up Doherty, who's obviously had done his shoulder. He had to take an overhead mark under pressure. Then he was able to hit the ground and run, and we had Akers. I'm not sure who the other player was back there at the time.
It might have been Owies or Motlop as well.
No, and Brody Camp right next to Akers. I was surprised because Fridge was next to him, so they must have gone forward. I don't know.
Maybe. Oh, look, we were a bit fortunate. There was a bit of when I say fortunate, it was all caused by our pressure. But Jack Viney was forced onto his right foot. Now, he could have disposed of the ball earlier, decided to take an extra couple of steps. In the end, that decision forced him to have to kick on his right foot. And, of course, he is a left footer. The kick didn't have much distance on it. It went straight to Wiedering. And obviously Carlton have practiced this because they must have done some match simulation. He went straight away to the other side of the ground.
Yeah.
And it was his kick that was marked by Doherty. The young Melbourne defender, McVie, made a bad mistake in not just allowing Doherty to take the mark and hold him up. He tried to valiantly spoil that ball, and by missing it, it really opened the door for Doherty to do whatever he wanted with it, streaming in towards our forward line. And it was his kick that was marked by Akers. He set it up beautifully for him to just come over the top and take the mark. And, of course, Akers very fortunately kicked the goal. There wasn't a lot of margin between the goalpost and the ball. He took a chance. But anyway, all's well that ends well. So it just goes to show you we're having a lot of those situations go our way. A little bit of luck never goes astray.
Can I just say, Vince, one of the comments was, sorry, Brownie, it was similar to the 2018 grand final with McGovern going to, and then for the Dom Shield, that set play.
The Dom Sheed kick.
Yeah. It's set play. It was fantastic. I thought we were all gone. Last 5 minutes, I was freaking out. The game in a bugger. But anyway, that was fantastic.
If you look at it, Motlop was the one that gave us that chance by kicking that brilliant goal from the forward pocket that brought it back from, I think, 9 points to 3 points or something along those lines. And all of a sudden it was next goal wins. And there were some fundamental errors made by Melbourne players that let us in. And, at the end of the day, you can say we were a bit lucky because of their mistakes. And on the other hand, I would say that we created those mistakes and forced them into those mistakes with our sheer pressure and determination for the entire match. There's one thing that impresses me about this team, Brownie. It impresses me even more than the 1995 team. It impresses me more than the 87 team and even the teams of 81 and 82. And that is that this team is made up of contested ball bulls. They are all hard nuts that go in for the ball and they don't give up. They make the opposition earn nearly every kick. And, that's why I think we've turned our season around. I can only put it down to that. They have just bought into the game plan. They've decided to make decisions to back each other in. And I guess when you pursue everything together in the one cohesive way, it's amazing how you get the run of the green, so to speak, or the rub of the green, or the that bit of luck that you sometimes need.
Well, yeah, and you know, there's a saying that goes around that you make your own luck in terms of this, but realistically, if you look like that you're struggling or you're down and out, and then there's something that bobs up that creates an opportunity, and you're able to take that opportunity and then run with it and be able to score. It's amazing how you actually lift around you. And in fact, in that very last minute, if you wanted to say, we had 2 scoring opportunities. One that we actually kicked the goal with, and there was another one that was virtually straight after it. So we were able to get stoppage, and we were able to send it back inside again. That we were able to kick the points. So
because 56 seconds, we've seen it happen before, where you know it's more than enough time for the opposition to get another one back and kick another goal. So we had to still defend for a good minute roughly, and I think we did that very well. In fact, under pressure in the last 2 weeks against Sydney and against Melbourne, I think we have made good decisions under pressure. Generally speaking, we've made better decisions than the opposition. It's the opposition that have made some fundamental errors under pressure, and I think we've caused those errors by our sheer tenacity and never say die attitude in making them earn every kick and every hand pass and every possession.
Yes.
If I may, just sorry, I'm looking at the time. Can we move to if you're done?
Yeah, is there anything more you want to say about the game before we move on to the votes, Brownie?
Oh no, I think it was a hard-fought win. I think they'll learn a lot from it. They're in a good position now that they've got either injuries or suspensions coming back going into the next game. So it's a good position to be in. Question mark over Doherty, obviously, with his shoulder. Akers is still carrying his, although he's trying to battle through as best he can. And he did a wonderful job on Friday night. He was able to battle through, which was good. And the signs are good from the point of view of the leadership in guys like George Hewitt had a quiet game. I thought. Now, Curnow had a quiet game. They're probably due. So, there's
Cunningham had a very quiet game too.
Absolutely. He was subbed out, Cunningham. And, we've got players that are
we can still improve. Yeah, we can still improve.
Absolutely. Absolutely we can.
Yeah. Cottrell didn't have the same impact that he had the first week, did he?
No.
We'll talk about the changes next week shortly. I just wanted to, if I can, before we do your votes, I just want to show a picture, if I may, from the game as we wrap up that game.
Yeah.
This is
just a picture of the Lebanese Mafia after the game.
Oh, yeah, it was after the game. The Lebanese Mafia there, it was great. And a little shout out to my little nephew there, Musa, which is a mad Carl supporter. So
isn't it great for the young ones? I mean, I had my own kids who were all teenagers, ringing me and, just beside themselves with excitement. It's just fantastic that this generation has finally tasted some final success, first time in 10 years. Our last finals win was an elimination final against Richmond in 2013. Then we lost the following week. This year, we're going to go at least one better than that. Same in 2011. We had an elimination final win against Essendon and then lost the following week against West Coast in a heartbreaking 3-point loss. And really, before that, we only had a couple of elimination final losses in 2009 and 2010. You then have to go back to 2001, where we lost in a semi-final to Richmond after winning an elimination final against Adelaide. So we are now into a prelim for the first time, Brownie, since the year 2000 when we played Essendon. And, of course, they beat us in that game to go on and play in the grand final against Melbourne. But if we happen to beat Brisbane this week, it'll be the first time we've made a grand final since 1999 when we played North Melbourne and beat Essendon along the way by a point in that exciting preliminary final.
Well, it would be just one of those things that would be unprecedented if Carlton and Collingwood ended up in the grand final in the last day of September.
Can you imagine the frenetic search for finals tickets, for grand final tickets?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, anyway, let's get on with the votes.
So, Brownie, I'm going to shoot up your votes here and just tell us a little bit about your votes there.
Sure. Yeah, outstanding. I thought Walsh, best man on the ground for mine. I thought his work rate was exceptional. He kicked very, very important goals at the right sort of time. And I thought that his leadership and his maturity, particularly in that game, was outstanding. 2 to Wiedering. I thought his game was you made a comment some time ago, Vince, about the fact that Wiedering's the barometer of Carlton. If Wiedering's playing well, then Carlton's playing well. And
we win.
I thought that his intercept marking, I thought his generalisation work in the back line was really good, and I was really critical of him in the year. You know that. Yep. 1 to our captain. I thought that not so much in the first and probably the first half of the second quarter, but I thought his work in the third quarter was outstanding when things were really tight. He was standing up in tackles. He was able to still be able to get the ball out. He was directing traffic, and he's starting to understand what it's like to be a captain in a final series and being able to direct his troops accordingly. So they were my votes.
Okay. Right, Big Vincent, I'm going to show your votes. Wow, it's exactly the same.
What do you know? Great minds think alike, they say. Yes, I had exactly the same players as you, Brownie, and I won't take up any more time in the show explaining why. But to me, Sam Walsh was inspirational. I think I'm saying this accurately, that he was literally throwing up immediately after the final siren because he was that spent, had run himself sick, and he had nothing left. And it was just an inspirational game by Sam Walsh. He really has shown his credentials in these 2 finals that we've played. And when you play great finals games, you really do elevate your standing in the game. It's a bit like Wayne Johnston did back in the late 70s and early 80s and mid 80s. So, Sam Walsh, I'll take my hat off to you, mate. You played a great game. Well done. And 2 to Wiedering for the same reasons that you said, Brownie. He just held up that back line beautifully. In fact, I think he played so well on Tom McDonald that I think he's going to force him into retirement. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom McDonald gets told by the Melbourne hierarchy during the week, mate, if you don't announce your own retirement, we'll do it for you. He looked really out of sorts. He looked like he was a fish out of water out there. He's obviously trying, but he just looked way short of a gallop. I think they would have been even better off playing Shaki, who was the sub. That was another thing I've got to ask you about, Brownie. Why would they not have played their sub at any stage during that game? Josh Shaki.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Take McDonald off. He's done nothing for the whole game. At least give him an opportunity for a quarter. No.
Yeah, it actually indicates to me that they don't have a great deal of faith in him, if that's the case. I mean, if you...
Well, why recruit him? They recruited him from the Bulldogs after he finished a stint. His first stint was with the Brisbane Lions, and then he went to the Bulldogs and didn't make it there either. Melbourne's now his 3rd club. Interestingly, he went at number 2 in the 2015 draft, and number 1 was Wiedering. So I think we made the right choice there. Yeah. But Shaki never got a run. I even thought it was a strange choice to make him the sub. I would have thought a player that can play in any position around the ground would have been a better choice. Someone like Michael Hibbard, who they dropped for that game. But anyway, let's keep moving on. Anyway. Number 1 vote was Cripps again. Inspirational game. He needed to step it up compared to last week, and he did just that. And take my hat off to Paddy Cripps as well. Fantastic effort.
All righty.
Now, we haven't got Joe's votes, as you can understand why. So we'll get those off him during the week, and we'll update our leaderboard next Sunday when we review the Brisbane versus Carlton preliminary final, and we'll update the ladder.
Can I just?
But I think you'll find that Walsh will now be probably ahead of Chera and Curnow.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Can I put my 2 bobs worth, if I may?
Of course you can.
Doherty, if you see the last quarter, and I watched it again, he had the last 2 goal assists. He was huge. The last 5 minutes. A special mention. And
he had dislocated his shoulder. He dislocated his shoulder and had it put back in. Very courageous.
On that note, let me get to
beautiful kick from Brown. That's a magnificent kick. Look at that. He was inside the centre square when he kicked that for a goal.
Well, does Sam Doherty get the Brownie points from Brownie for his courage and bravery in coming back onto the ground after dislocating his shoulder, or is he going to give it to someone else?
Can I reveal it, Brownie?
No, I'm going to give it to the big fella.
Oh, second week in a row, Brownie.
Second week in a row.
Wow. Okay, so these are his major stats: 15 possessions or disposals, 12 of them contested. That's a pretty big percentage.
That's good.
73% disposal efficiency, seeing 12 of them were contested. It's pretty good. 4 inside 50s, 4 score involvements, including 2 goals. Those all-important 2 goals in the first quarter, but also did a bit of backup ruck work. I think he got something like 8 or 9 tap-outs.
And also he took some fairly telling marks around the ground as well.
Yeah, one of them was an absolute screamer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. He launched himself and he took an absolute great grab. He's actually, as I mentioned last week, he's actually getting more and more confident. And he's actually starting to impose himself. He's now learnt that he's a big man in a big game. So and his ability to be able to understand what he's got to do with his responsibility is getting better and better. So the big fella for me, he's earned them well and truly.
Now, Brownie, I know that you're not one who frequently goes onto social media, but do you remember that song back in the late 70s, which was a smash hit here in Australia by John Paul Young called Love Is in the Air?
Mm-hmm.
Well, last year's grand final entertainment was, do you remember who the main artist was in last year's grand final entertainment?
No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Have you heard of the name Robbie Williams?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Well, Robbie Williams, who's been adopted into the Carlton family, he's actually a Carlton supporter. In fact, he even wore a Carlton Guernsey at one of his concerts recently.
Love it.
He did a little selfie video of himself watching the game and how excited he was at Carlton winning, and started singing "The Conning's in the air," and he started to put his own words to the song, and it's on the Carlton Football Club website if anyone wants to see it, and on all of the social media outlets like Facebook and Instagram, etc. But yes, we've got some pretty high-profile artists, singers like Robbie Williams around the world who are following the Carlton journey as well. So that mark by Tom DeConning motivated him to rewrite the words of that song and to put a little jingle to it himself.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? He's a young man coming into a big game, and he's going to embrace it, and he's also going to be able to have an influence on it. So that's good.
He has been playing very well in the finals too, hasn't he, Tom?
Absolutely.
All right.
So aside
moving
from
right along, Rash, we're going to preview next week's game quickly.
Yeah. Aside from McEnroe, Kiss, ABBA,
yes, we've got a whole stack of them. I did a whole jumper punch segment on that once. All right, so next week we've got the 2 preliminary finals. The first one's on Friday night. The bounce is at 7:50 p.m. at the MCG. Collingwood versus the all-conquering GWS Giants in the first preliminary final. So let's quickly go over that. Who do you think wins and by how much and why?
Well, I've liked GWS from the start of the final series. They've come home with a wet sail. The comments were in and around the fact that they match up really well with Collingwood, and I think that the momentum will carry them through. Collingwood's got, and interestingly enough, even though Collingwood won the minor premiership and stuff like that for the year, and have obviously been clearly the best side in the competition.
24 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and Collingwood's got its woes as well. It's not as simple as turning up and being able to play. They've got now a big job to turn around the tsunami, if you want to call it, which is the orange tsunami, and to turn that around and be able to counterpunch and be able to win the game. It's going to take a real effort from each of their players. I know that they lost Adams with a hamstring injury. They'll bring in Dacos, but realistically that's not like for like, because Adams is an in and under. Dacos is more of a scouter. So I think that GWS might have a little problem. Tom Green may get rubbed for the elbow. They might get it to a fine, perhaps.
It's amazing how when these things happen in finals, Brownie, that they downgrade them from suspensions down to fines.
Yeah. Well, the guy that's really important to them in the middle is Big Briggs, and he's their ruckman. He did his shoulder. Now, hopefully that'll come up. Although they were mentioning the fact that it's his left shoulder that he damaged, and from the rest of the game he was virtually right-handed with his work.
And noticed that he was certainly carrying a shoulder injury at one point. Yeah, absolutely.
And look, I'm sure that McRae will have some sort of counter attack on the fact that GWS like to control the centre corridor. They get a lot of they score heavily through there, and their ability to run. And interestingly enough, one of the things that GWS made Port Adelaide look on Saturday night was very slow. The Port Adelaide players looked like they were running on top of the ground, and GWS were able to not only match them with leg speed, but also be able to hunting packs. If you threw a blanket over the players that were in and around the ball, there was definitely more orange jumpers there than there were teal and black. So I just think that GWS have got the momentum going in. I expect Collingwood to come out with a counter punch, but I think GWS will win the game.
Well, one of the things that they'll have to overcome is a hostile crowd, because there's no doubt that Collingwood will have the vast majority of supporters there making a hell of a lot of noise. So that's one of the things that they'll have to overcome. But as Toby Green said in the interview after the game last night, we just block out the noise. It doesn't bother us. And, we just have a lot of self-belief. So it will be interesting to see how they handle that pressure cooker scenario at the MCG. Yeah, I think it'll be a very entertaining game. I think it'll be a very close game. Question is whether we're going to see GWS be the sleeping giants of the competition, or whether Collingwood are going to be the giant killers and make it through to the grand final. Only because I'm going to hope for a fantasy grand final, I'm picking Collingwood in a thriller. I'm going to tip them by Braden Maynard's number, 4 points. So I think GWS will be brave in defeat, but I think Collingwood might just get over the line in a nail biter. And that probably tells you who I'm going to select in the other preliminary final for my fantasy grand final. But anyway, I think it'll be a great game. It wouldn't surprise me at all if GWS has the better of Collingwood and runs away with it.
All right. Let's move to the next game, if we may. And here it is.
The next game is ours.
Yep.
Here it is, everyone. Saturday, what is it? Is it the 23rd? So Saturday, the 23rd of September. The bounce down is 5:15 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time at the Gabba in Brisbane. It's the second preliminary final Brisbane Lions, the home team, versus Carlton, who are going up there to hunt the Lions. And it's going to be a fantastic game. I venture to say that Brisbane won't have played another team that's got quite the same level of pressure on the contest as Carlton. They haven't played a team like that for quite a while.
Yeah, look, I think the big thing for me is that they reckon that there is a fairly big contingent of Carlton supporters on the coast. So I think that, I'd be encouraging all of the Carlton supporters to get along there and make some noise and see if they can't drown out a little bit of the Brisbane stronghold that they've had up there. Now, I did mention earlier in the podcast that Brisbane kick a lot of points, and I think that, I can't see that changing in a hurry. Like I said before, we've got guys like Charlie that really hasn't figured all that much in the final series so far. He's just about due to have a night out. I suspect that they'll probably bring in Harry as the other tall forward. And I would say that Martin will probably come back into the side, maybe at the expense of
Cunningham
or Kennedy.
Cunningham.
Kennedy, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I'd still like to see. I still like to see Hollins in amongst there, just for the run up there, and also I'd like to see Dow in there as well. The Kennedy thing experiment really didn't work all that well, I don't think.
He kicked the goal, but that was about it. He kicked the goal in the third quarter, I think it was.
Yeah. He was better in the second half. I'd rather Dow. I reckon he's got speed. We need the speed.
You can't fit them all in, and if you're going to put Dow in, who are you going to throw out? That's the question.
Well,
who are you going to? You're not going to tip out Cripps or Walsh or Chera or Hewitt. Maybe Kennedy comes out for him at best, but you've already got a half forward in Jack Martin coming in that you need to find space for. So I don't know that Dow's going to get a gig.
No, I think Hollins will get over Dow's position.
It just depends on how Akers comes up too, because in that last quarter he was really carrying that shoulder. It's giving him some grief. And don't forget they tested out Cripps too on a couple of occasions on Saturday as well. Giving him a bit of rough up and stuff like that. So I would imagine that Brisbane are going to go into this game knowing full well that Carlton's going to throw it at them, and they're going to have to be on their game to be able to do it. The one that concerns me a little bit is McInerney, the big ruckman for Brisbane. He had a quiet one last time out, and he usually plays really well against Carlton, McInerney. So and he's a big fellow and stuff, so he gives him a good opportunity. I mean, Lockie Neal, that's one that we've got to keep quiet, particularly in the mids. I think as the Walsh and Chera have both been in pretty good form, I'm sure that they will have the opportunity of feeding. So I'm going to go out on a limb, boys. I'm going to actually pick Carlton to win this one. Surprise, surprise. And I'm going to tip it by about 12 to 15 points.
Interesting. Well, look, can I just inform you and enlighten you on? I heard your comment about Brisbane's kicking for goal, and you said that you find them to be an inaccurate kicking side. I think it'd be fair to say that they've addressed that in recent weeks, although they had one game where they went back to old habits. But since round 22, now this is the third last round of the season, they kicked 15 goals, 99 to beat Adelaide 13-15. They were the inaccurate side, 93. Probably a lucky win in the end at the Gabba. Mm-hmm. The week after that, they also kicked accurately when they came to Melbourne and beat Collingwood at Marvel Stadium. It was a first versus second battle. And they kicked 19 goals 10 to Collingwood's 15 goals 10. So they beat them by 4 even goals. The very next game, which was the last round of the year, is the one where they went back to the old habits, beating St Kilda in the end by 12 points. And it was 12 points because it was 9 goals 18 to 9 goals 6. So that's where they scored twice as many points as goals in that match. And then in the qualifying final a fortnight ago, or was it a fortnight ago or a week ago, sorry, they beat Port Adelaide 19 goals 9 to Port Adelaide 11 goals 9. So I think to a large extent they've addressed that, Brownie. I don't know that they're as inaccurate as they used to be. I acknowledge that they did have quite a string of games where they were inaccurate, but I reckon they've addressed that to a large extent.
Yeah, do you think that was because the pressure's not there with those games?
Maybe if they come up against our defence, they might be a lot more rushed in their kicking for goal, and they might spray a few more.
Yeah, and I think the midfield is really important where that's concerned. To the feed inside, as well as putting pressure and being able to lock it in and be able to defend. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, obviously, Danaher and Hipwood, they're going to be players that are going to be important for them, as is Charlie Cameron. He's a goal kicker, but all we've got to be mindful of is the fact that if it comes out the back, Charlie's going to be on his bike. So we've got to be able to nullify.
Who would you put on Charlie Cameron? Nick Newman or someone else?
Oh, I'd start Newman on him.
Right.
I'd start Newman on him.
Well, again, I think this is going to be another classic, another nail biter. I think Brisbane won't know what hit them when we start this game. I think we'll hit them hard early, try and get ourselves a good lead. I think taking the crowd out of it for them is important. I think we can get over the line. I'm going to say Carlton by, what have we won by so far? 6 points and 2 points.
Yeah.
I'll make it 4 points. So both games I think will be 4 points. So I'll go right in the middle of that. So I'm tipping Collingwood to beat GWS by 4 points and Carlton to beat Brisbane by 4 points, setting up the dream grand final of a Carlton and Collingwood grand final, first time in 42 years. And the omen is that KISS will be the pre-match entertainment, and they are also Carlton supporters.
Yeah.
Ben Simmons has been seen many a time wearing Carlton Guernsey.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'm hoping. I'm probably tipping more with my heart than my head here, but it remains to be seen. I think anything's possible. I don't think we go up there with any fears. We've got a lot of self-belief. I think they'll be the ones that are a bit nervous because they're expected to win. They'll start favourites and they'll have all the pressure on them to get through to a grand final. This is their best chance to make a grand final in probably half a dozen years that they've been in the finals. Mm-hmm. But this time, this is set up for them. 2 home finals. And really, if they don't take advantage of it this year, will they ever get to a grand final under Chris Fagan? So let's see what happens. And I'm sure it'll be a great game either way.
Yep.
All right,
Rash.
So we're going to wrap up because Brownie's going to have to go. From my end, I reckon 6 plus.
Yeah, what do you think, Rash?
Carlton will win by 8 points.
Carlton by 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we've got to wrap up for Brownie. Brownie, thanks so much for being on the show. We're going to continue on.
Mate. Thanks again.
Really appreciate it. We love your work, mate.
Right, boys.
Always appreciate your input, Brownie, and your insights, and I'm sure all of our viewers do too. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next Sunday night when we wrap up the preliminary finals. And Rash and I will take it from here till the rest of the show.
All right. See you, Vince. See you, Rash.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
Right, thanks.
See you later.
There he is.
All right, we're back.
Aren't we? How fortunate are we, Rash, to have someone like Brownie, a premiership player, giving us his insights into these finals games?
Oh, mate, it's unbelievable. Seriously. And even, because I feel in, but as a spectator, watching, it's the insight he gives. It's amazing.
Indeed. All right, let's go to our next segment,
which is the Omen bet.
It is. Oh, haven't you
All
got
right.
my introduction? I thought you had my introduction there.
Wait,
The
hold
Omen
on,
bet
I
of the
might
week.
have it. Right, I do. Let's go.
Now it's time for Big Vincenzo's Omen bet of the week. There you go.
There you go. It's on the screen
Thought I'd do
now,
my
Vince.
own introduction. Now, this is an Omen bet for a horse at Melton, the home of harness racing here in Victoria. It's this Tuesday night, the 19th of September, and it's coming up in the very first race on the program, which I believe is 1:06. So it's 5:59 p.m. Race 1, number 4. And have you got it there, Rash? Oh, you've got the screen up. That's great.
Yeah,
Well,
up. Yeah.
as you can see there, number 4 is Diamonds and Blue. And haven't they been a team of diamonds so far, the boys? Let's hope that they can have a diamond performance next Saturday night and bring home the bacon and get us into a grand final for the first time in 24 years. So I thought that would be a good Omen bet for the week. Now we're going to put what are we putting on it, Rash?
I don't know.
I think I sent that to you beforehand.
Like how much money?
Oh, we're going to put I think we only got $25 left in the account. We're going to put all of it on. We're going to put all of it on for the place. Okay, all on it for the place. $25 for the place. I think this horse has got a good chance of being in the top 3. So let's give it all we got for Diamonds and Blue. Last week, unfortunately, our horse galloped. It was a very good chance of finishing into a place. I backed it for the place, and it galloped and it ran into 4th after losing about 100 metres. Can you believe that? Just our luck. But anyway, that's racing. Now, that's the Omen bet for the week, Rash.
All right. Thank you very much.
And what we should do now is just remind everyone of the shows that are coming up on the various channels. We've got, of course, the Jumper Punch with Rocco and Mars and Paul coming up on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Don't miss it. It's going to be a fantastic program. There'll be all sorts of footage there with the Carlton Melbourne final. And, of course, then Wednesday night, you've got Forever Rivals at 7 o'clock on the Jumper Punch channel, followed by Legends of the Jumper Punch at 8:30 p.m. Have we got a little
no, we don't. We've got
promo on that?
No, I know who it is, but
I know who it is too. All right, well, let's tell our viewers, because our viewers deserve to know the inside information before anyone else. It's Carlton's 1995 premiership defender, Michael Sexton. He's a terrific guy, and if you watch on 8:30 Wednesday night, you'll see a terrific interview with him, and certainly part of a very, very successful team and a successful era. So he is our guest interviewee on Wednesday night. And then, of course, the following Sunday, we're back to ourselves at Blue Sunday, 7:30 here on the Jumper Punch channel. We're not sure whether Joe will be back by then or not. We'll give him all the time he needs to grieve the loss of his partner. That'll be his decision. There's no pressure on him to come back at any stage. So we really appreciate you coming on, Rash, and hosting for us and being in the control room. Really appreciate that and putting up the comments.
There's been a few comments out there that I couldn't get a word in, but I'm just controlling. I'm just doing the job.
Yes, just so that everyone understands. We're a team here at Blue Sunday. We're a terrific team, and everyone gets their involvement, and we do everything my way. I'm only kidding. No, I'm only joking. Look, it was great to have Brownie on, and good to get your thoughts on things as well, Bresh.
Hey, just a quick thing I was going to say, there's been a comment, do you know if they're playing the game at Princes Park this week? For those who are not going to travel.
That's a good question.
Brisbane,
look, I believe
it's ridiculous.
I believe that tomorrow morning, in fact, Monday morning, there's some sort of I'm not sure if it's an open training session or whether it's just a meet and greet with the players or some sort of interaction with the players that the fans can have. I'm really not 100% sure, but I do know that if you turn up to the club tomorrow morning, around about 9:30, I think it is, something's going on down there. So you need to register to get in once you're there. Yeah. So I think it might be some sort of open training session or some sort of meet and greet with the players. So you can wish them all the luck before their venture to Brisbane later on in the week. But to answer your question about whether they're going to replay or not replay, but show live the Brisbane Carlton game at the club, I think that'd be a great idea. I'd be staying tuned on that, or ring the club, find out. On Saturday afternoon, I think it would be great if they put a big screen up, let everyone sit in the legend stand, and we can all watch the game together.
Very good. Big shout out to Sammy Almoushi. That's put in there from 10 a.m. to 11:30. You have to register. That's for tomorrow.
There you go.
For Monday, yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for letting us know. I knew our viewers would come to my rescue.
Are we going to see you at Ange Christo's this week? You coming with some of
I missed out on the big one last Thursday night, didn't I? You ended up being on the front bar. How good was it on the front bar? You guys were brilliant. In fact, Fitzy was very, very funny, and I don't know how they planned or rehearsed that, but it came off a treat. And it was great to see not only Ange, because he owns the restaurant there, North Seafood Bar and Grill in Northcote, but Kuda was there, Mil Hannah, Vinny Cazzoggio, and it was even great to see David Parkin turn up with,
that was great.
I think with Wayne Bulldog Gilbert, I think I noticed there as well. So great to see some famous names at Carlton all coming along to celebrate. And hasn't it been a tremendous atmosphere and an air of anticipation every single week leading into these finals? And now we've won 2 finals in a row. Who knows? Let's make it 3 in a row and get into the granny.
Absolutely.
No reason why we can't.
I'm so happy, Vince. You know, I was traveling to the sandpit, and I was so very happy to witness that game.
How lucky are you not to have that you didn't travel back to Dubai?
I postponed it till October, which is great. So I was able to.
Well, there you go. You can take the Premiership Cup back with you.
Yeah. So
wouldn't it be nice to take back the Premiership Cup?
Yeah, but I'm not going to the game. I can't deal with that. No.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for your involvement. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your questions and your input. We do this show for you, and so that you can have a bit of in-depth analysis of the weekend's games, and with a strong focus on Carlton. Of course, we're a Carlton channel. We really appreciate your loyalty and your support, and we look forward to having you join us next Sunday night at 7:30. Okay, anything else you'd like to say, Rash?
Go Blues, that's it.
Now, don't forget, you're going to put on the Carlton theme song, aren't you, seeing we had another big win? You got that ready to go?
Yes. I'll do that now.
All right, now we're going to go 3, 2, 1, and go Blues. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Go Blues!
Go Blues!
We are the Navy Blues. We are the old dark Navy Blues. We're the team that never lets you down. We're the only team old Carlton knows. With all the champions they like to send up, we'll keep our end up, and they will know that they've been playing against the famous old dark Blues.